Tale
Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome to the third session of our Dasavatar series. So we've so far explored, so basically we're looking at the idea that Krishna reveals himself to us in different forms, to suit the different times that we're in. So we've so far explored the forms in which he's revealed himself essentially to us in the Satya Yuga. So we've so far looked at the Matsya, the fish, the giant fish who kept expanding himself. That was, kept becoming big enough for a pond, a lake, and a whole reservoir. And then the Kurma, the tortoise, that was sort of moving, mountains. And last time we explored Vraha, the boar, who was very playfully defeating Hiranyaksha. And then we also looked at the very famous avatar Narasimhadev, the half lion, half man that slayed Hiranyakashipu and saved his dear devotee Prahlad, the little prince. So this week we are kind of going past the Satya Yuga avatars to the Treta Yuga, and we're looking at Vāmana and Parashurāma, sorry, I can't pronounce it. So we're moving to the next type. So I think we're now moving from those animalistic forms of the Lord to a little bit more human, so sort of more relatable probably to us. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over the session to Keshava Madhava Prabhu. But if you have any questions, Hare Krishna Vrinda, lovely to have you with us. Do unmute yourselves and ask any questions or comments you may have, or put it in the comments box. And I see there's a few of you guys watching us on Facebook. Please do type hi Jen, I see you've just joined us on Facebook. Hare Krishna to you and Andre. So do put any comments or questions you may have on the Facebook comment section, and I'll be looking at the Facebook feed throughout, and we can of course facilitate any questions from there. So without any further ado, Keshava Madhava Prabhu, the floor is yours. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Dee. Yes, as you said, we covered the animal forms of the Lord in the Dasavatars. Yeah, for those who just joined, it seems my voice might not support me as well as I thought. I have to take some of these things for the throat. So if it gets too worse for you, if you don't understand me at all, please let me know. You might have to cancel that. But otherwise, if it works, then we will continue. Yes, there were 4 animal forms, or at least the 4th was already a mixture, half man, half lion. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur is describing in his Krishna Samhita that there's an evolutionary system to the Dasavatars according to what level the living entity is with the development of his or her own body. And now we enter the human forms, starting with Vāmana-dev and then Parashuram. And then there's also an important detail in regards to that what facilitates the appearance of the Lord. And he always has so-called agents. And in the case of the animalistic forms, these are, for example, simply elements like the water of the Gabudaka ocean, or another element like earth, where they appear from. And in case when he accepts a human form of body, then of course, then there are much more personalities are being involved, namely parents. And this is something that Srila Prabhupada always highlighted very much when it comes to forms of God as they are described in the Vedas, that he says one cannot just randomly claim, okay, I'm an avatar or I'm a form of God. He says the parents and the place of birth, the names of the parents and the place of birth should be recorded within the Vedas, or in our case, Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, there's a big number of avatars, and we might not find immediately the names of the parents, or those souls who act as parents, we must better say. at once, but this is one of the standards for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas too, whether or not they accept a person as an avatar or not. So in the first avatar we are covering today is Vāmana-avatāra, the dwarf Brahmin incarnation. For those who might not be so familiar, the Brahmana is one of the four social classes that are described in the Varna-ashrama system, this ancient, how to say, system of society as we find it in the Vedas. And it is compared to a body, and the body has legs. These is compared to the Shudras or the workers who carry the body, who move this body. Then there's the stomach, or like the intestines, which provide the body with energy. And these are the Vaishyas, or the mercantile class. Means the farmers and the businessmen. And then there are those who protect the body. These are the Kshatriyas, the soldiers, the administrators, the kings. And then there's the head, and these are the Brahmins. Brahmana means literally someone who has knowledge of Brahman. Brahman refers to transcendental knowledge or knowledge of the absolute. And this is called the highest order of society, or like the most glorious order, because a body without a head doesn't move anywhere. Of course, without legs, your body might also not move, but even existing, your body cannot without a head. So, and Vāmana took the form of a Brahmin in this case. And there's a whole history to it. We, some of you might remember when we spoke of the Kurma-avatāra, the tortoise, there was a history how the demons and the demigods, how they came together and they churned the ocean of milk. And some personalities from there are very, very much involved in this pastime also. When you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, you find in the 8th canto, there's a whole range of avatars and pastimes that chain up quite, in a succession actually. So the Kurma-avatāra was there, the tortoise who held the big Mandara mountain so that the ocean, the milk ocean could be churned. And the idea was to generate the nectar of immortality. And the reason why this happened was that the demons or the asuras could overpower the demigods or suras. The Sanskrit term is asura for those who are demonic beings, and suras are those who are the divine beings or like God conscious beings. And it happened due to an offense of the king of the demigods, Indra, that the demigods lost their powers and the demons could overpower them. And they took shelter at Vishnu, and Vishnu suggested, okay, make a pact with the demons that you both work on getting Mandara mountain to the milk ocean and use it as the churn, that what churns the ocean. And so you will produce nectar, but at the end, the nectar of immortality will only be given to the demigods, not the demons. So then in this effort, a lot happened. We discussed that in the previous, or like the first session of this series. And ultimately it happened that the nectar was generated. And then Vishnu took a form called Mohini Murti, is a very most attractive female form of the Lord. And in this, and he, or like in this form of Mohini Murti, he bewildered the demons. There's a whole description how they saw this most beautiful, attractive woman and completely surrendered actually their faith to her. They praised her and said, actually, we have trouble among each other now to determine who will get nectar and who will not. And somehow or other, because they were very much influenced by the mode of passion, they were very fond to entrust the handling, so to say, of the nectar of immortality to Mohini Murti. So they had no authority anymore or like they didn't have a say anymore in the distribution, because they literally handed it over, said, you take care of that now, you fairly distribute the nectar because we quarrel just among each other and don't know how to do it properly. So Mohini Murti then, in short, arranged that the demons didn't get it, and the demigods all got the nectar, except one demon by the name Rahu. He managed to sneak on the side of the demigods and get a drop of nectar, but Vishnu reacted very quick and with the Sudarshan chakra cut off his head. And since the head was already touched by the nectar, the head remained alive, but the body beneath the head, means kind of here, was not touched by the nectar, so it died off. So then this head of Rahu was accepted by Brahma also as a planet. In Vedic astrology, you find Rahu is a very significant planet in the life of everyone. It's usually, everyone has a Rahu period. I finished mine, fortunately, relatively early, but it went on for long, like 10 years or something. And it said this is the period where you particularly struggle with many things. So it's a demon who has a natural, who's enmity with the moon and the sun. So he's also in the Vedic astrology, he's made responsible for when how to say it in English, when it's the sun eclipse and moon eclipse, when this happens. So it said it's him. So it's a very different version than what we hear from modern scientists, but that's the Vedic version. So it's also said the drop of nectar went through his neck and dropped to the earth. And last time I think someone asked, there's also a place apparently where the Kumbh Mela is happening, where the drops of nectar fell down. But it's also said a few things grew from it, and that was garlic and onion. And since the nectar is in itself life-giving and sattva, so garlic and onion, they have medical power, or they're medicines. At the same time, since they were touched by the head of the demon, they also increase the passion and the mode of ignorance in a human being. So therefore, the Vaishnavas generally, they refrain from eating that. So at the end, since the nectar went only to the demigods, so that was very upsetting for the demons. And we might remember the leader of the demons is called Bali Maharaj. Maharaj is a title for king, and Bali was leading the first attack already that gave the upper hand actually to the demons. And when later Indra came to make the pact, also Bali agreed, okay, we will churn the milk ocean. So things got very upsetting for the demons, and a fierce battle started right at the milk ocean. It's described in length in the 8th canto, how also the demons, interestingly, they had so many different animals they were riding on. Some it said on camels, some on monkeys with red faces, some on all kinds of animals that were mentioned, and all kinds of weapons were involved. And it's described how both sides, demigods and demons, they bore an intense hatred for one another, and they were fighting to the very core. And it was an intense scene in which Vishnu also interfered, as he interfered before, when the demigods and demons brought the Mandara mountain, which is a massive mountain of gold, and it slipped out of the hands of the demons and demigods, crushed many of them. Vishnu had to bring them back to life by glancing over them. He revived them. And similarly also in the fight of the demigods and demons, it got very intense. Bali Maharaj had a very powerful airplane that was sometimes visible, sometimes not, had all kinds of weapons. So he was quite an enemy to face in battle. And the demigods didn't have an easy fight. Ultimately, though, it happened that Indra managed to defeat Bali Maharaj and many of the demons. Actually, Narada Muni and also Brahma interfered because the demons were almost extinguished, and that cannot happen. There must be some balance. Not the whole species cannot be just wiped out. It's not in the interest of the Lord. So Bali Maharaj was brought by some of the other demons, by his military leaders, to a place, some mountain, where Shukracharya was residing. Shukracharya is a very important personality also in this this pastime of Vāmana-avatāra. He is generally seen as the spiritual master or priest of the demons, which is an interesting topic in itself, since our understanding of what we call a demon, particularly in Krishna consciousness movement, is actually very distinct. A person in the Christian context uses the word demon very differently, I guess, than we would use it. And a person without any religious context, again, would use the word demon like as a mythological figure or whatever. But in the Vaishnava philosophy, the word demon or asura refers to quite a range of possibilities, what kind of consciousness a soul can have. For example, the atheist would be considered a demon, since he is asuric, non-godly, or doesn't believe in a god. But also the monist, he's another type of atheist, but who has some concept of transcendence, some existence above this existence, but is impersonal. So that could be another definition of demonic. But then we hear of these personalities like Bali, for example, who worship a Brahmin like Shukracharya and can even see God like Vishnu from face to face, talk to him, behave to him, and still they're considered demon, which was for me puzzling. I sent out also some inquiries to some senior devotees to hear what their understanding of that is. So, but Shukracharya is said to be the priest of the demons, and by his own mantra, by his own power, he brought Bali Maharaj back to life. He was practically gone already, kind of in a transition period of dying, and he brought him back to life. And this was also the reason why then Bali Maharaj accepted Shukracharya as his spiritual master or guru. So this was the background, because we will hear later on how Bali Maharaj and Shukracharya, how they had quite a strong difference of opinion when it came to Vāmana-avatāra, the dwarf incarnation. So, and Bali Maharaj was brought back to life, and he was, although a demon, obviously very much inclined to act or perform pious activity or live up to Brahminical culture. Bali Maharaj also descends from the line of Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad, we heard, was the small boy who was protected by Narasimhadev last time, who is the son of Hiranyakashipu, a great demon. The demons originate from the same father as the demigods in the Vedic descriptions. We heard of Kashyapa Muni and Diti and Aditi. Last time we heard of Diti, who urged Kashyapa Muni to impregnate her or to give her children, to kind of push her for intercourse at an inauspicious time. And from there, the demons came. Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha, and generally said from Diti came the Asuras, and from Aditi, another wife, from there the Sturas or demigods were being generated, because Kashyapa Muni is a Prajapati, a progenitor of living entities. So Kashyapa Muni is the father of both of the demigods and demons. So they originate from the same parents, practically, which is interesting. Because sometimes the distinctions, they become blurry at some point, because what is now we like to have on one side black, okay, the demons, on the other side white, that's a demigod, and we can easily distinguish. But this distinctions, they become impossible at sometimes, because things are a bit too subtle and too mixed up. So Bali Maharaj came in the line of Prahlad Maharaj, who was a son of Hiranyakashipu, who was a son of Kashyapa Muni. And Prahlad Maharaj is the grandfather of Bali. The father of Bali Maharaj is called Virochana. Just the name is mentioned in Bhagavatam. There's not much more of his history. He certainly also has some, but in the Bhagavatam, only his name is mentioned, that he is the father of Bali Maharaj. So he came in a line where he actually, biologically speaking, is a demon, but at the same time, mentality-wise, is much of a demigod. So we have these two things in one person, as we might also know for ourselves. In the Kali Yuga, it is said that, of course, demons and demigods live within the same person, whereas in other ages, they live maybe in the same family, and other ages before that, they live on different planets. And it said in Satya Yuga, there weren't even demons, all living entities were suras, or God-conscious persons. So Bali Maharaj was a very good disciple of Shukracharya, and he pleased him very much. And so in this way, he got blessed. There also were other Brahmins in the dynasty of Brigu. Brigu is a name of a Brahmana that also is very significant in the Srimad Bhagavatam in another canto. So simply to mention it, because these are powerful people, these Brahmins on that level, the Brahmanas. And Bali Maharaj pleased all of them by his service, by his austerity, by his yagyas, by his sacrifice. And they gave him a powerful chariot, which was equipped with a lot of mystic abilities for fighting. And also they instructed him to perform a sacrifice called Vishvachit, which made him also powerful. When you read the Bhagavatam, we hear often how different personalities perform so-called sacrifices or yagyas, which bring the result that within the material world, one becomes very powerful, or one gets particular strength, mystic strength, and influence, and so on. So this is called, in Sanskrit terms, karma kanda, activities that are often look devotional or spiritual, but have the motive of that the person wants material benefits from it. So also Bali Maharaj was performing those, and ultimately became so powerful by the blessings of the Brahmanas that he again could attack the heavenly planets, because his core desire was, I want to rule the universe. That was Bali Maharaj's passion, so to speak. It was his desire for his life. And then he attacked Indra. Indra is the king of the demigods. He's often depicted, for those who don't know, as this personality who has all over his body eyes. This is Indra, the king of heaven. There's a whole story that before eyes, he had something else there. We don't go into that story now. It's also interesting. Yeah, so, but he's situated in kind of in the upper planetary systems. It's not the highest, but it's quite high, and he's the king. So, and there also Hiranyakashipu back then attacked, and he took over Indra's planet. This is kind of the, if you compare it to a country, you would go in Switzerland to Bern, to wherever the government sits, and take over this whole thing. So you practically rule Switzerland. So kind of, or in Germany would be Berlin, the Bundestag, kind of like that. So he managed to defeat them. Indra and all the demigods, they had to flee from there. They went into exile because by the blessings of the Brahmanas, Bali Maharaj was too powerful to be defeated. So this was the basic situation that led to that the mother of the demigods, Aditi, was in great distress and taking shelter at her husband, Kashyapa Muni, and lamenting and saying, we lost everything. We lost our homes. Our sons have to, and all of us, we have to live in exile. We lost our wealth, our progress, everything. And please instruct me, like, what can we do to reverse the situation? And then Kashyapa Muni made some remarks, which is interesting. He is a very transcendental person with no attachment to any kind of family life or anything. He just remarked how amazing it is, how strong attachment to material happiness might be. And then he informed her about a yagya he did when Lord Brahma asked him to populate the universe. And this is called the Payo Vrata. Vrata means a vow or a strong sacrifice. And the Payo Vrata is, some of you know, like those who are devotees, to practice fasting on Ekadashi twice in a month on the 11th day toward full moon and or waxing and waning moon. And there's the day afterwards, which is called Dvadashi. And the very, staunch Vaishnavas, they also do some fasting on that day. And common it is that you only drink milk on that day. And Aditi was instructed to do many things, but this was essentially just existing or like living on milk for these days, and also using particular mantras and so on in order to please Vishnu. So she did that vow for like approximately 10 days. And then Vishnu himself appeared to see Aditi, and he spoke to her and empathized with her, showing her how he knew her heart, and that he said, okay, I know that you wish for your enemies to be again defeated, and that your sons get reinstated in the heavenly planets, because these are the demigods, and that's where they belong. They are all her sons practically. And she was very happy to hear that. At the same time, Vishnu remarked, okay, fighting them is not a good idea, might not have a good outcome, since Bali Maharaj is blessed by the Brahmins, and therefore cannot be defeated. And also Vishnu would compromise his own attitude or his own value, because he said he's Go Pramana Hitayacha. That means he's the protector of the Brahmins. He worships or like values the Brahmins above all. And so if he would now fight Bali Maharaj like this, he would also actually fight against, or like he would discredit the blessings the Brahmins were giving. So he couldn't do that. But he said, okay, since worship of me never goes in vain, and I want to please you, I have to find another way. So in his way of dealing with the situation was to appear himself as a Brahmin dwarf, better to say. So he had, of course, he had to balance a few things there. He could just say, okay, I please you, Aditi, and therefore go against the Brahmins, which are also my devotees. So he had to find a more strategic way to do that. So at first, he appeared to Aditi and Kashyapa in his four-armed Vishnu form. That's something you also see when Krishna himself appears in his original form, that he first shows his four-handed form of Vishnu, carrying these four items like the conch shell, the disc, the lotus flower, and the club. These are the four items Vishnu's carrying in his four arms. And usually he does that to confirm to the parents that is truly the personality of Godhead. Also to Krishna's parents, to Nanda Maharaj, Devaki, and Nanda Maharaj, or not Nanda Maharaj, Vasudev. He showed himself first as Vishnu to convince them, say, okay, it's truly me, the personality of Godhead, just that we are clear. And they might think otherwise, oh, it's just a wonderful child or person. So he showed his form like that. And he said, like a theatrical actor, he just switched into being this dwarf Brahmin. And then there's the whole scenery, because first he was naked. He didn't have anything on, but he has just this beautiful transcendental body. And again, I will show you a illustration. So here we see when the dwarf Brahmin, Vāmana, was being equipped with many things, which I will tell shortly. Actually, we started already before we sang the line from the Dasavatar Stotram. So I will, please forgive my horrible voice today, but still let's try to chant it. Jalayasi vikramane balin adbhuta vāmana padanaka nirachanita jana pavana Keshavadrita Vāmana-rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare. O Keshava, O Lord of the universe, O Lord Hari, who have assumed the form of a wonderful dwarf Brahmana, all glories to you. With your massive steps, you deceive King Bali, and with the Ganges water emanating from the nails of your lotus feet, you deliver all living beings in this world. So, about that, what is described in this particular glorification, we will hear later. This is the main pastime. I wanted to give you consciously a bit of a, how to say, history of how it came, or what were the reasons that that Balamandev appeared as he appeared. Because we heard always he has his reasons for appearance, and Parijana Sadhanam Vinashana Chaduskritam. It's always this: pleasing the devotees, destroying the demons. And in the first place, pleasing his devotee Aditi. And we see them here in front, Aditi and Kashyapa Muni. And all of these, also the Brahmins and sages and demigods, they were around to equip Vāmana-dev with all these items that he has. And it is common that, in particular the Brahmins, the child gets actually initiated here quite early, right at the start, actually with 5 years. Usually the Brahmin boy gets initiated in Vedic mantras. And as said, Surya Dev, the sun god himself, chanted the Gayatri mantra. And Brihaspati, maybe he's probably here somewhere, he was handing the sacred thread. This is usually given at a time. And Kashyapa Muni, as we see here, he offers a straw belt to that. And Bhumi Devi, the personified earth, is probably also, I don't know which one it is, she gave the deer skin to Vāmana-dev. And then Chandradev, the moon god, gave him his Brahmadanda, which we see here is the stick for the brahmachari. And Aditi gave him of already before some undergarments, some cloth for undergarment. And Indra, the king of heaven, he might be this one, I don't know. He gave the umbrella to Vāmana-dev. So different demigods, which we don't see here. For example, Brahma gave him this water pot, and the 7 sages gave him kusha grass. It said it in each universe. There are 7 particular sages that are always present to benefit the universe. Mata Saraswati, this is the goddess of learning we see here. She gave him the Rudraksha beads. There's a particular pearls to wear. They're also common for the followers of Shiva. And Kuvera, the king of wealth. Oh, what is this now? He gave him, we see that here, a pot for begging alms. And it was Bhagavati, which is a name for the wife of Shiva, who gave the first alm. Because it's tradition also, the brahmachari lives under the shelter also of a brahmana, and he collects alms for the brahmin or the guru. So, and he does not like earn his own money, he brings everything to the guru and depends on the guru's welfare or care for him. So in this picture, we see all these items, and we hear a bit about from whom did he get what. We will hear this also in another pastime of King Prithu and others, how it is common that when the form of Vishnu appears, all these different personalities come and offer some gift, some present to the personality of Godhead for that he needs or takes advantage of in his pastimes. So we see him also here with a particular haircut. Is actually said, yeah, he has this golden blonde hair, which is actually matted, like he apparently had really a dreadlock mat because he was very austere Brahmin. And back then it was obviously common that the brahmacharis, or like those student monks, they wore a deer skin, which is, and as for the Vaishnavas nowadays, we are very careful with not using any animal things. There it was in a different context. It was handled differently. Yeah, but this was obviously the standard. So he remained this dwarf, and what happens is, one significant thing Vāmana-deva does is that he attracted all those around with his effulgence. One name of Vishnu is Keshava, and Kesha means many things. It means also beautiful hair, or Krishna has beautiful black hair, but Kesha means also radiance or effulgence. And it said Vishnu is the origin of the immense, most sublime Brahman effulgence, which is very attractive because it's one of his opulences. We can understand that actually the most attractive thing, means literally attractive, in this world is light, which comes from the sun globe. If you take attraction as something you've been drawn to, if you look at plants, I noticed this here when we were going up a mountain. You see trees coming out of a mountain, and simply by the positioning of roots, they would theoretically must grow this way. But since the light comes from up, they make straight a move toward the light. So each plant, whatever it is, it moves toward the light, is being attracted toward the light. So also we people, we like to, as soon as there's sun, we like to get some sun and being drawn to the light. So the sun is very attractive. So Vishnu is the supreme transcendental sun. He attracts all living entities by that. So he used that Brahman effulgence also later on to attract King Bali. At that time, or like what also what Vāmana-deva did when he started his activities, he first lit a sacrificial fire that was Brahmins do, performed a fire sacrifice. And then he heard that Bali Maharaj was instructed by the Brahmins to perform a big Ashwamedha sacrifice. Ashwamedha sacrifice is a type of sacrifice that those who are emperors do. We also hear it from a story of King Yudhishthira and others in the Mahabharata, that when someone wants to be the emperor of practically everything, they perform this type of sacrifice, which is very powerful to please Vishnu. So, and he made his way to the arena, to the place where Bali Maharaj was performing those sacrifices. And also when he arrived there, they said the sages and Brahmins, they perceived him as like the sun rising. He was so effulgent, so beautiful in his lightful existence, that they were completely drawn to. And first they wondered, is the sun god personally being present and so on? But he was even more powerful than the sun god. So when Bali Maharaj welcomed him very respectfully, was very impressed. And also what Bali Maharaj was, he was a follower of Brahminical culture. So it was very normal to him to offer some alm or some benediction, or you want to call it, giving some charity to the Brahmin, because that's the culture. The Brahmin doesn't work himself. He is very much occupied with performing sacrifices, studying scriptures, speaking scriptures. So, and he's maintained actually by those who are called householders. So Bali Maharaj was actually very proud, and he thought, I own the whole universe. So choose whatever you want from me. It can be whatever, land, a wife, riches, no problem, just name it. And then Vāmana-deva just said to him, he was pleased by the attitude of Bali Maharaj, because also Bali washed the feet of Vāmana-deva, welcomed him properly, took the feet of the water, or the washing water took it on his head, because this was proper culture. So he had quite some humility, actually. He was very pious, which makes us wonder, like, how is he really a demon? But he had a strong desire to rule the universe, to have it for himself. Yes. So, and then he offered Vāmana-deva the benedictions, and Vāmana-deva said, okay, I only want 3 steps of land, that's all. And then Bali got, again, quite maybe triggered in his pride and saying, what are you asking for? You're not very intelligent. He said, you're a small boy. You're obviously not very intelligent to ask me only for 3 steps of land. because I'm the emperor of the whole universe, I can give you anything. And at that time, Shukracharya, the guru of Bali Maharaj, was already aware what was going on. He already sensed, or he had obviously the capacity to see, here is Vishnu in the form of this dwarf Brahmin, wanting to take away the universe again from Bali Maharaj. And Shukracharya was also exactly aware how Vāmana-Dev planned to do that, which is amazing. You know, he could obviously see Vishnu's intention. He told Bali Maharaj, this is Vishnu. He will first take 2 steps in which he will cover already the whole universe. And there was the 3rd step left for which you cannot provide anything. So don't do that. You know, so he advised him actually against fulfilling the blessing, his word to Vāmana-Dev to give 3 steps of land. And it came as Shukracharya, predicted, that when Bali Maharaj agreed, okay, you get these 3 steps of land, Vāmana-Dev suddenly became, from a dwarf, he became very big. He became the biggest. And this is a famous picture. I hope I get it proper. Go to the next one. So here we see that how he became massively huge, or it took him only 2 steps to cover the whole universe, and even with the 2nd step, he pierced the shell of the universe. We heard in the Pastime of Creation series how the shells of the universe are made, that the universe has a diameter of 4 billion miles, and there are different layers of each element, 5 elements, and each element is 10 times bigger even than this diameter of the universe. So in the first layer is the earth layer. So with his foot, Vāmana-Dev crushed through that layer, and then the transcendental, or like actually through the whole universe, and through that the transcendental Ganges water came down, and it washed the feet of, or the toe of Vāmana-Dev, and it was later caught by Lord Shiva. That's also why he has, when you see these depictions of Lord Shiva, he has this little water kind of fountain on his head, and this resembles how he actually caught the Ganges on his own head, because otherwise the Ganges were so massive, if it just came down like this, it would have smashed the whole universe like this. So this was one, let's say, side effect of Vāmana-Dev's steps. So, but the point was, yes, Bali Maharaj promised 3 steps of land, and now all land was taken already by 2 steps. And Vāmana-Dev got angry. He's saying, okay, king, how truthful are you? What you promised me 3 steps of land. Now I already have taken everything. What can you offer? Because there's this picture. Do we have it here perhaps? Ah, yeah. We see here Bali Maharaj was then with a snake. He was put, he was taken prisoner. And this was because he was actually untruthful to his own word. He promised something to Brahman he could not keep, could not give him the 3rd step of land, and was considered quite an offense. So ultimately, Bali Maharaj, the only thing he could come up with, what can I still give, was his very self. He said, please take the last step on my head, and this way I am yours. So one of these 9 processes of devotional services is Atma-nivedanam, giving your whole self. And it said, and Bali Maharaj is often quoted as one of the examples who performed this particular devotional service of giving himself fully to the Supreme Lord. And one lesson we can learn is from this pastime, from many pastimes of Krishna also, but here particularly it is, Krishna is smashing the pride of a conditioned soul. Bali Maharaj was very much full of himself, thinking, I'm the Lord of the universe. This is the core disease also of the conditioned soul. It's in the Bhagavatam described as the me and mine consciousness. I take something, identify with it, it's me, and then I think it's mine. So in this way, we try to take something for us, even this whole body, which is just given to us. We think it's my body. I can do with this body whatever I want, but it's not. The body is given. We didn't create the body. We received the body, but the body is so much out of our control. We don't do so many things, and the body is growing, developing, healing, and so on. So, but it's not our property. So, and this is like what Vāmana-deva also does here, to show you are not the true proprietor of things. You know, everything belongs to Vishnu, and he can take it back in any capacity. Now he used a very smart way to actually use Brahminical culture, something that what Bali Maharaj was perhaps also quite proud of, and use that to show him actually your claim to the universe. No one has a claim to it actually, except Vishnu. You know, also in a small way, a small universe, like whatever, it's my house, or it's my city, or it's my country, or whatever. This is all this so-called ahankara, false ego, where the conditioned soul identifies with. So this way, Bali Maharaj was conquered, and the universe was back actually in Vishnu's hands, and later the demigods, of course, were reinstated. And then this is what we have here on the pastime of Vāmana-deva. Are there any comments or questions to that? I hope I can answer if there are any questions, because I also myself have some questions open on that one.
No, I can't see any, so maybe we can carry on.
Sure. All right.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I have a question. So I actually have a couple of questions. So my first question is about the pastime of Mohini Murti. And I find it like it's a very fascinating pastime, you know, Krishna taking this form of this most alluring woman. So my question might be a little bit controversial, but I'm just curious, because we see in this pastime that Krishna uses, you know, that form, you know, as Munimurti. He uses, you know, his beauty, or her, I'm not sure, his or her beauty, and for a greater goal. But in our Vaishnava culture, you know, the beauty of women, it's appreciated, it's not like denied, but there's also a very big emphasis on the importance of, especially for women, to be shy and chaste. So my question is there like any place within the Vedic culture for utilizing that feminine beauty for a higher cause?
There certainly is. I mean, what comes to my mind is, what comes to my mind is that a very traditional thing, to which we might try to apply the principle also in our movement, are the Devadasis. Devadasis are very aware, we must say, it's past tense, very special women who were literally married to the deity. These were women whose life purpose is to decorate themselves, make themselves beautiful for the deity, and dance exquisitely, or exquisitively. What is the name or word for it? At least to the best of their capacity to please the deity. That was their life's purpose. This was in a very ugly way, how to say, degraded by men. And these Devadasis became ultimately prostitutes, or have been handled as such, which is a very sad thing. In our movement, also, as far as I understand it, I don't have the exact Srila Prabhupada's quotes now in mind, but I mean to remember that he says, all that what we do usually for others, we try to do for the deity. That means a woman can also apply herself beautifully with makeup and dress, but with the mentality or the attitude, okay, to please Vishnu, or like the deity with it, either by doing some performance for the deity, or like being in the kirtan and a regular arati or whatever. So it might be controversial, because then who can judge the true motivation, and can be looked at as, okay, this like also for men, like there's always the suspicion of being self-serving with it. Sometimes this was applied also in preaching strategies that might be questionable, where women use their charms to distribute more books. And it was even gone into some quite, how to say, not just gray zones back in the time of this movement, where this was kind of exploited in a bad way. So I'm certain that this can be used for a higher purpose. I think it's important to not, if we want to use something in Krishna service, to double check that. If it's not the regular thing, like you use your time and energy to do some service, but if it's maybe or some specific, let's say in this case, beauty and charms, which might be controversial, to check that also with Guru and Shastra and according to time, whether it makes really sense to apply it like this, or what is the benefit, well, what is the benefit compared to the possible disadvantage, or yeah. And as you said, it's appreciated. We hear, for example, in this, when Sati, she was she wanted to go to the sacrifice that was performed at her father's place, Daksha's place, with Shiva, and she saw from her place how all the demigods were going, and it's described how the demigods and their wives were traveling, and the wives were very beautifully decorated and dressed and so on, and it was very pleasing to the husband. And as a general religious principle, Srila Prabhupada points it out in a purport, in one of the purports to these verses, that is usually very pleasing for men if the women apply, or like, how to say, makes herself beautiful for the husband, also in an official occasion. Yeah, these other things come to my mind. I don't know if your answer or your question is satisfied. Or...
Thank you, Prabhu. I think those are very valuable reflections. It's just, I was just curious about that. So, and the other question that I had is about the second pastime of Vāmana-Dev, and I think it's a more it's a more philosophical question. So my question is, you know, you mentioned that by allowing the Lord to put his, you know, his foot on his head, Vāmana-Dev was, you know, performing that limb of devotional service of completely surrendering oneself or giving oneself, you know, to the Lord. That's what he did. So, you know, in his case, it was very much like, you know, you could like externally do it. It's like, okay, here's my body, step on me. But how can we, you know, in our lives, how do we practice that, giving ourselves completely to the Lord?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, let's break it down to daily practice. We might not be able to hand our body literally to the Lord and being even touched by the Lord's lotus feet. What we can do is certainly give the facilities of service that we have, that our body gives, to the Lord. For example, it might be that it's also said Pada Sevanam, one of these services one does is meant for the deity. Depending on where one stands in one's spiritual life, there's different capacity to serve the Lord. In our movement, of course, we have distinctions based on initiation. You might be allowed to do certain services or not, depending where you're standing in your training and education and so on. So, but generally, there's so much opportunity how to engage the facilities the body has in Krishna service. Very directly by working, so to speak, within the temple, by doing either the cooking, helping the cooking, worshiping the deity, worshiping the deity, cleaning the temple, or performing other types of work. There can be also, for example, in a Ratha Yatra situation, there's so many things to build and to work physically. Mentally, you work by planning, doing strategies, like as you do for all these online programs. There's so much mental effort, so much planning, ideas has to be found, so-called brainstorming, and advertising and putting into action. So which also all requires our physical and mental facilities. Also, what we do now is now you give, or we all give our time, our attention, which is a very valuable thing. Recently, this one musician, I don't remember his name, he considered this the most precious or valuable thing, that our attention that we can have or can give. So in this way, this principle of Atma-nivedanam, to whatever degree it might be, can be applied by anyone by rendering some devotional service either at home, if you have your own deities, or if you don't have deities, you have an altar perhaps with pictures, and you cook for the Lord. You say, don't cook for me, cook for cook for Krishna. In this way, offering the physical facility of cooking to the Lord could be something. And yeah, or like it's Prabhupada often says, one can also work something not directly related to Krishna, but if the result is given, it counts also as the activity has been dedicated to the Lord. All right.
Prabhu, may I ask a follow-up question?
Mm-hmm.
So my question is that, I know that you explained this quite substantially, like how we can dedicate ourselves fully to Krishna, even though it might not be that each one of our activities is directly for Krishna, because we could offer the result. But my question is, if we are, prioritizing things in our lives, spending time and energy on things which is not essential, it's not our occupation, it's not our duty towards our family, it's not just like maintaining the body, looking after the mind, but we all know we do things which are really non-essential. Is that like indicative that we are still not fully offering ourselves to Krishna? Because I was thinking about this recently. Like I was thinking, if I had to like report to Prabhupada, like at the end of each day, and I had to tell him like, this is everything I did, then I was thinking like, there's some things I would be ashamed of if I had to go to Prabhupada and say, Prabhupada, I spent, an hour today, doing this or doing that. Then I would feel like, I would feel ashamed, and I would feel like this is not something I could, offer to Krishna or justify. I mean, it's not something sinful, but I was just like, I was talking with my friend, for instance, about like, if you get like really absorbed in taking care of your pet. And, I was saying like, if you have an animal, obviously you've got to take proper care of it, because it's like, it's like in your shelter basically. But I was saying like, you could get so caught up in the world, and that's not something I could go to Prabhupada and say, Prabhupada, I spent like 3 hours today with my dog. I was like, so I don't know if you can shed light on this. Is there, if we do things that are basically can fall into the category of just frivolous or unnecessary, can we offer that to Krishna? Or do we really need to realize that if we have this in our life, we really not at the point of, fully dedicating ourselves or fully giving ourselves to Krishna?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, certainly I do not belong to those practitioners who could claim, not even close, that my 24 hours of the day is simply Krishna conscious. Practically, it would also be probably considered a part-time devotee if you consider essentially what is the exact spiritual activity each day I do. It might be simply also when I regularly go to work on a day, or then recreation, whatever. If you make a bicycle tour, or then you watch on Netflix something to space out, or whatever things you do, they're not devotional, of course. And I think we have a certain capacity to dedicate our physical and mental body to Krishna, and we should sincerely attempt to fully use that capacity, but it has limits. And my understanding is also that what we measure ourselves with is pure devotees. Also in Srimad Bhagavatam, for example, these personalities, they have a different, even in itself, body. Their body don't consist as much of in the same mixture of passion, ignorance and goodness as we have. So I think we should also be a bit sober and also compassionate with ourselves in regards to our capacity. There's also a sign of humility if you know your capacity and the boundaries, and not try to be a transcendental person while being a conditional person. These things take time and, of course, effort. And I think as long as we are, how to say, in the process of having to make effort, we have a certain measurement of whatever 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, where we have capacity to fully really engage in Krishna service, and then have this what we call sense gratification. I think the effort must be to, of course, balance that in the first place, and then gradually try to increase over a lifetime. Also, Kadambakana Swami was, once we spoke about that, and it's clear in different how to say chapters of your life circumstances are differently. Also, your capacity to dedicate yourself might be different. So I think these things must be also judged according to the circumstances you are in. Maybe comparatively, for the circumstance you're in, you're doing great, where others who maybe have even other facilities don't use it as much as you comparatively use yours. Could be one kind of comparison. So I think, yeah, there should be soberness, and this, in that sense, also humility and meekness to say, okay, I try sincerely, but let's not fool ourselves. Yeah, there is some tendency to sense gratification, and let's not stop us there, but just like continue with it and try to increase the devotional part. That would be my point. All right.
So sorry, very quickly, I think it kind of relates to the point about, how we kind of do our best, but, to be a true devotee. We've got a question from Facebook from Venkata. She says, Hare Krishna, my doubt is, will I be allowed to attend classes in Swiss universities for my PhD if I apply tilak on my forehead? I would have thought yes, but...
Well, I don't know how liberal the Swiss university is with that. If they go so far as say, okay, religious freedom, we allow those who are Christians to wear tilak, I guess you have to try it out. I cannot say whether they will allow it or not. In my working environment, I cannot do that. At least on the forehead, I sometimes had it here visible, but on the forehead is a bit too demonstrative. That goes under trying to influence others too actively. I work in a therapeutic field, so I have to have some kind of neutrality there. So, but maybe in university that's possible. I don't know. All right, then I would suggest, since the time is also progressing, time factor is merciless, always going. I would continue that we also cover the next form of the Lord, Parashuram. It's also, which is now, we come to a category. We mentioned at the beginning of our series that there are different categories of avatars, and one is called Shakti-avesha-avatar. Shakti-avesha-avatar means it's actually a individual living soul as we are, but is particularly empowered by Vishnu. And there are different descriptions. There's indirect and direct empowerment, or like distinctions in terms of to that the empowerment or the Avesha Shakti. Shakti means the energy, Avesha means to be equipped with. Might be, for example, that one is very able to spread devotional service, or like Bhakti Yoga, where it's Narada Muni would be an example. The 4 Kumaras that we also heard about, they are their opulence, or like Shakti, they're equipped with is the knowledge of the Lord. We will hear also in some later session about King Prithu, who is able to maintain all living entities. And now Parashuram, he's a Shakti Avesha, and his Shakti is to punish the wicked. We come here to a form of the Lord which stands out on all the, from all the other forms in his fierceness. He's fierce, brutal. It seems bloodthirsty form of the Lord, who his mission is to or was to punish all the kings who had great disregard to Brahminical culture. So in Vamanadev's case, we had now still really established Brahminical culture, but there are times when this is not there, and then Vishnu might choose to interfere in that way. And also Parashuram, of course, has parents. His father is Jamadagni and his mother is Renuka. And there's an interesting story how it comes that Parashuram is such of a nature as he is, because Jamadagni's wife Satyavati was married to Richika Muni. Richika Muni got his wife from a king, and he prepared once 2 oblations, one to be eaten by his wife, one to be eaten by his mother-in-law. And one was meant for creating a kshatriya, one for a brahmana. Kshatriyas are the kingly persons. So the brahmana oblation was meant for his wife, and the kshatriya oblation for his mother-in-law. So the mother-in-law thought, since probably he loves my daughter more than myself, so this oblation for my daughter will be better. So I will ask my daughter to change with me. So and the daughter, of course, they changed the oblations, and the mother ate what was meant for the daughter, and the daughter ate what was meant for the mother-in-law of Richika Muni. And Richika Muni later realized that and said, "Oh, you have done a great wrong, and now as a result, your son will be a fierce kshatriya. You will have a strong or fierce temperament." And Satyavati was afraid and asked him if he can please change this kind of curse. And he said, "Okay, not your son, but his son will be of a kshatriya spirit." So Jamadagni was therefore more of a brahmana, but his son was then one of his sons, the youngest, Parashuram, was this, although born a brahmana, he acted later as a kshatriya, as a king. So the word Parashu means a chopper or axe. We see that form. Anyway, we should go further here with this one. This is his weapon of choice. There's only one picture I found. There's not so many pictures of him. So we see here Parashuram in action. And it's also Kshatriya Rudhira Maye Jagat Apakata Papa Snapayasi Payasi Shamita Bhavatapam Keshavadrita Prikupati Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare. O Keshava, O Lord of the universe, O Lord Hari, who have assumed the form of Prikupati, Parashuram, all glories to you. You bathe the earth in the rivers of blood from the bodies of the demonic Kshatriyas you have slain. In this way you wash away the sins of the world and give relief to those who suffer in material existence. So in this verse, Parashuram is particularly glorified for him slaying the demonic kings, and there are very graphic descriptions of this really rivers of blood and mountains of bodies that develop, because all in all 21 times he rid the Kshatriyas as a whole, so to speak, from the world. And that was his mission. And the background for it is as follows. Parashuram's parents, Jamadagni and Renuka, they lived in a hermitage, rather in the mountains or in the forest. And his father had what is called a Kamadenu cow. Kamadenu cows are actually spiritual cows. We hear in the Brahma Samhita that they're the desire trees, and then they're also desired cows, and they give practically just everything you desire. You don't even get only milk, you can already get what is used for sacrifice, ghee, directly in large amounts from the cow. So once there was a great kshatriya, Kartavirya was his name, and he got the blessing. I don't know why he wanted this blessing, but he got 1,000 arms. So just imagine like a person with 1,000 arms was very powerful. He also was equipped with mystic powers, and he practically ruled everywhere. And he, it was a time, let's mention this already, another great demon was present, a demon named Ravana, which will be relevant in the Vāmana-avatāra pastime. And once Kartavirya was bathing in a river, and he, out of just simply wanting to exhibit his strength, he used his 1,000 arms to block the river, and the river even flowed backwards and flushed, or like how to say, overflooded the camp of Ravana, who was very disturbed by it. Ravana is considered to be a 10-headed demon, and he came to Kartavirya to insult him in front of his wives and so on. Kartavirya dominated Ravana and took him prisoner, and said then he released him neglectfully, like a monkey you catch and then let go. So he was humiliated by that. So that already gives an indication of the time we are in, since also Ram and Parashuram, the two forms, they will also meet later on at some, but we hear that in the Ram pastime. Yes, Parashu means he is a carrier, or Ram who carries the axe or the chopper. That's the particular feature, and he has a black deer skin. That's his dress. And it happened so that Kartavirya once came to the hermitage of Jamadagni, and they noticed the Kamadenu Cow, and also there was a calf, and they got envious and forcefully took away the Kamadenu Cow and stole it. So when Parasharam learned about that, when he came back later on, he immediately went after Kartavirya and challenged him to battle. And Kartavirya saw there's quite some power in Parashuram, who came there with his axe alone. And first he sent his armies, and there's something called an Akshauhini. We hear it also in Mahabharata, which consists of all in all kind of 180, 90,000 soldiers, including horses and elephants. And there were 17 of them that were single-handedly destroyed by Parashuram with his axe. And there were rivers of blood and all kind of body parts flying around, because this is what happens when these kind of battles happen. Ultimately, Kartavirya was challenged 1-on-1, and he had 1,000 arms, and he could, of course, string 500 bows then. And it's described how Parashuram also had a bow, and he was able, with this one bow, with one of these shots, like by mantra, they use mantra powers, and maybe the arrow split in 1,000, and he cut all of the 500 bows of Kartavirya at once. And then gradually fighting with him with his axe, chopped off all his arms and ultimately his head. So this was a gruesome scene that was witnessed by the 10,000 sons of Kartavirya. So they were traumatized practically. It said later on, the Bhagavatam describes it as they could never find happiness because they always remembered how their father was slain. So since I work in psychiatry, for me it kind of clicked the traumatization by witnessing a murder or like a killing like this can be really disturb the mind for a very long time, depending how we are related to that. So later, when Parashuram took then the Kamadenu Cow and the calf, brought it back to his father actually disapproved to the act, saying it's actually sinful that you just immediately killed the emperor. And Parashuram later on, he took a vow to, for 1 year, visit holy places and do some penance to, counteract his sin. What happened, interestingly, on Jamadagni's side, the father of Parashuram, a bit later, he acted in the same way, cruel. Because when he spoke to Parashuram, he highlighted the actual beauty of the Brahmana as his forgiveness. This is the core quality of the Brahmana, therefore we are worshipable. So therefore a Brahmana should practice forgiveness. So it happened that his wife Renuka once, she was about to get water for the next kind of sacrifice or like ritual ceremony, what was required. But on the way, she got caught up seeing Gandharva king sporting with his wives in the water, and she felt inclined toward him, or like attracted mentally, and she forgot how the time passed. So she noticed that, went home to Jamadagni, just placed the water pot, stood with folded hands, and it was late. Jamadagni was a very powerful Brahmin. He could see what's going on. He saw the adultery in the mind of his wife, and he got very angry, it is said, and he ordered his sons to kill her. The older sons, they refused. And then he turned to Parasharam, who was the youngest son, say, okay, kill these two sons who disobeyed my order and the sinful woman. And Parashuram, it's described, knowing the power and prowess of his father, followed the order, and he killed his two brothers and his mother. So seeing this alone already is like, wow, what's happening here? You know, well, what has this to do with religious principle? This seems like madness, you know. And it is described, Parashuram knew he was first also afraid of the curse of his father for disobedience, but he knew, if I do that, my father will be pleased and give me benediction. So the benediction he later asked was that his mother and brothers are being brought back to life, and that they have no memory of that Parashuram killed them. So it said they just woke up like from a sound sleep ultimately and were brought back to life. But since this in itself was actually a sin, it's later described in the purports also from Srila Prabhupada. And there's also a contradiction in the behavior of Jamadagni. I don't have an answer for why he behaved like that. Because on one side he says, okay, he should be very forgiven. And then he's very hard, extremely hard on a small offense to kill his wife and his sons. So it happened that the sons of Kartavir Arjuna, they were of course vengeful. And they went for the hermitage of Jamadagni at one point and brutally killed him. They chopped his head off, although Renuka, the wife, was begging or praying that they don't do it. But so this was also due to the offense Jamadagni committed by letting his youngest son kill his wife and the brothers. So there's always karmic action-reaction. So Parashuram, learning about that, got very upset. Went, of course, after the 10,000 sons, and he killed them all. And he said he collected the heads of them and make on a big pile, and there were rivers of blood. And then even later on, when he killed the other kshatriyas, lakes. So in this way, signalizing to those empires or like this atheistic kings, now you will be finished. So this is what he did on the plea of revenging his father. He killed all the kshatriyas. And 21 times he, how to say, repeated that. And then at some point also retired when his work was done. So ultimately his mission was to rid the earth of the burden of ungodly kings. And it's a very intense form of the Lord who is very fierce, as we can hear. So he's also one of the regular appearing forms. And as I said already, we hear a bit more about him also the next session when we address the Vāmana-avatāra. Yes, I think there were some questions now. Also, yeah, Sharadir, we can of course address some more questions about Bali and Vāmana-deva. Perhaps you can first check on whether on Parashuram there are some comments or questions.
No question on Parashuram, but maybe we go to the question on Vāmana-deva from Sharadia, and Sharma's got a question around the onion garlic thing. So Sharadia, do you want to go first, please?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So my question about the pastime with Vāmana-deva and Bali Maharaj is that why did, Vishnu come to Bali Maharaj, and have that whole exchange? Why was he so merciful that he came, to a demon? Because you were mentioning that although Bali Maharaj was, you know, was cultured, like he had this faith, you know, in offering charity to the brahmanas. He was a cultured person. He also mentioned like he had a lot of ego. So I'm just curious, like why does he get, why does he get picked, to get a darshan of the Lord and have this whole exchange with the Lord?
Well, the exact circumstances why Vishnu chose to show himself to him, I don't know. What particular soul Bali Maharaj is, I mean, one thing we could consider is that he comes in a line of Prahlad Maharaj, which is a very glorious line of Kings Prahlad Maharaj, pure devotee of the Lord, of Vishnu. And so Bali was, in that sense, also on how to say, playing in that league, of being quite an elevated soul, actually. Who could see Vishnu face to face? He saw Vishnu before, and that was when the demons and the demigods were performing the pastime of churning the milk ocean. There also Vishnu personally was present and communicated also with the demons. And Bali Maharaj was the leader of those demons. And in the pastime, it happens to be that the demon, of course, is someone who gets to see Vishnu, because the demon is the cause for the appearance of Vishnu to some degree. And here we hear that Aditi, of course, needed the kingdom to be brought back to her sons, and therefore Vishnu was pleased and said, "Okay, I will find a way to do that, and at the same time protect the principle of Gopramana-hitayacha, that I'm actually the protector and benefactor of the Brahmins." And we can understand, my understanding is, I don't have the purports, there are not so many purports always, also in this Bhagavatam we have, to Bali Maharaj, why Vishnu exactly chose him. But my understanding is, since he was very pleasing to the Brahmins, automatically he's pleasing to Vishnu, because it said, Vishnu says, I'm represented by the Brahmins. And if someone is really pleasing the Brahmins, he's pleasing Vishnu. So Bali Maharaj was also in the process actually of performing Ashwamedha sacrifice, which was instructed by the Brahmins again. So he was actually, it seems like that he was actually a great devotee with an anartha of wanting to rule the universe. That's how it seems. And it seems his enmity was in the first place with the demigods and not so much with Vishnu. They had, I guess, a very, how to say, a conflict of who is supposed to rule. And it happened, okay, he could, by the blessings of the Brahmins, he was allowed to rule. And I think he was a pious king. He was no Hiranyakashipu. And this is my understanding why also Vishnu related to him in this way, because it's also said how he received Vāmana-deva was very pleasing to Vāmana-deva. And Vāmana-deva, of course, Vishnu knew about this attitude of Bali. And I would say, therefore, he chose to reciprocate in the way he did. But yeah, there might be some research from maybe from the Bhagavatam. There's a Bhagavatam available where Vishnu talk about his comments are there. Maybe he has some more insights about the personality of Bali or identity of Bali.
Thank you. So we've got a question around the garlic, and the first question is, Hare Krishna Prabhu, I did not quite get the point about Rahu and the relationship between garlic and onions. Yeah,
it said the nectar of immortality is very an elevated substance, purifying each living entity. And it touched the throat. The demon could get 1 or 2 drops. So the head became already invincible, or like undying. And the body could die because it wasn't there. But since the nectar had touched the demon, it got, so to speak, contaminated by also the demonic being. So and then it contains 2 aspects. One aspect is the medical aspect that garlic and onion have healing powers, or for medical purposes they are used, and it's a fact. It's in many cultures and countries, garlic and onion, they're used in that sense. And at the same time, it increases demonic tendencies, means literally passion and ignorance. The true garlic and onion in particular, also the lust, like lust in a broader sense also of enjoying this body, also sexual lust, is supposed to be increased, or an aphrodisiac, so to speak, though not by smell, probably by some other aspect of the how it's called, fruit, or yeah. That's what my understanding is.
Cool. Thank you. We don't have any other questions on Facebook. Any other last questions, points?
Yeah. Hare Krishna.
No.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can I ask one last question? I have many questions.
Yeah, please.
So
You've turned it to me. I was that person with questions when we were doing the pastime.
So my question is, Prabhu, I find it interesting that you were saying that Bali Maharaj was no Hiranyakashipu. You know, although he's like, you know, he's in his family, and I just find it interesting because we also have in the Bhagavatam, we've got, you know, Rita Asura, I think, who is also like a demon, but is not really, you know, in his like kind of like, externally he's definitely a demon, but there's something about him that's also not a demon. I don't know how to express it.
Yeah, his character, his personality he was more truthful than Indra, and he lectured Indra on religious principles, and he was right.
Yeah, exactly. So like he plays the part of a demon, but his character is not that of a demon. So I don't know if you could, you know, if you could maybe just, you know, just elaborate, you know, on that point, how then if someone can on one level, you know, look like a demon, still could actually be pleasing to the Lord. Because you were saying because he was serving the Brahmanas, you know, he was actually pleasing to the Lord. So I find that very interesting.
Yes. Okay. Hare Krishna. I think when I prepared for this particular sessions and went through also last time already through this Bhagavatam accounts, it more and more like I try to accommodate these concepts we have of what is a demon, what is a demigod, and we certainly have to say goodbye to this I would call it simplistic ideas of good and evil. It's just not reality. Even the Bhagavatam, I mean, it's clear that these things are intertwined, and there's certain how to say, we have to think in proportions, I would say, and we cannot strictly separate these two. Even in personalities, they're no also in the material world, we say all living entities are influenced by all the three modes, but some are predominated by one mode, and like sattva, like demigods, but still they're influenced by passion and ignorance. And then there are those who have very much prominence of passion, but also they have goodness. So sometimes Srila Prabhupada refers to all living entities in the universe as being intrinsically demonic, since they turned away from Vishnu and wanted to somehow enjoy this world. He says that he also refers sometimes to yogis and demigods as demons, simply because they have the tendency to claiming material nature for themselves, wanting to enjoy, wanting to control, and like this. And I think the concept, I mentioned it in the beginning, is asura and sura, dedicated to God or God inclined and disinclined, or even averse to Vishnu or God. So, and at the same time, we can see also in ourselves, we have both tendencies. It's said also for devotees. Srila Prabhupada mentions that also in some purports in the Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter, if I'm correct, that there are devotees who actually engage in devotional service of the Lord, but deep inside their hearts, they don't have faith in Krishna. or don't have faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and so on. So we might also see in ourselves that we consist of parts. In the psychology, there's the ego states. Like there's a core personality, but they have different side personality aspects we have. And some of parts of us, there might be actually very demonic. Whereas others are very pious and inclined, and we have them at the same time. And it's kind of a battle between them, and to ultimately to decide which parts shall prevail, so to speak. Because pious activities, as we see there also by Yanakashipu, tapasya and Vedic knowledge, which is in itself seems to be a pious spiritual thing, can be used for demonic purpose. It's also said for, like in spiritual life, also in ISKCON, we see it in its history, dedication to the Guru's mission and so on, might end up the person wanting to take over the mission of the Guru, being yourself Guru, which is demonic, instead of being the servant of the Guru. So I think we all have this tendency to play along to some degree with being pious and trying to be surrendered to the Lord, but maintaining one part who says, but I myself also want to get something here, which is called false ego. The ahankara principle affects us all. And so therefore we must be careful, certainly not externally, to judge like who is this and who is this. There might be indications from the external body and what family you come from, what nation, that might give some indication of something, but certainly doesn't give you, do justice to your overall personality. Then it's about characteristics that are shown by also devotees or non-devotees. You have those who are officially not devotees or in any spiritual process, but they show very sublime characteristics. Might it be forgiveness, might it be honesty, might it be truthfulness, and so on, charity. Whereas many who go past as devotees don't have that even, or just to a very minimal degree. But we say perhaps because that person linked itself or herself to this movement, therefore he or she is better. And so I think our consideration must be way more subtle and much more distinct in terms of the parts, demonic and the divine, or like how to say, demon and demigod parts we have. So I'm also a bit puzzled by all that. I sent out some inquiries to my own initiating spiritual master and some other senior Vaishnava, and I'm awaiting their reply on this, what makes a demon demonic. This is also my question here, and I will share with you as soon as when I have next time. Hopefully I got the responses from those and see what they say. All right.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. That was a very profound answer, and I'm looking forward to hearing more if you hear back from your Guru Maharaj and the other senior Vaishnavas.
Sure, thank you. Okay, we have one more question here. Okay, HUYP30, Light, you may.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Shyama here.
Ah, Shyama.
I want to add to what you said about Bali Maharaj.
Mm-hmm.
There's a code of conduct that actually operates amongst the demons as well. And Bali Maharaj would not go back on his word. He promised the Lord 3 steps of land. But although his Guru Maharaj, his Guru instructed him, Sakracharya, not to award the 3 steps of land. For Bali Maharaj, he did not mind losing his entire kingdom, then going back on his word. And also the whole issue around Prahlad Maharaj being the same family was highlighted during that pastime. So Bali Maharaj actually went ahead with his promise rather than breaking his promise. That was of utmost importance to him.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, I also also remember in the verses itself, there's quite some space is given to the fact that actually also Bali Maharaj descended from Prahlad Maharaj, and how this is significant. And yeah, demons means not having no values, not at all. Obviously they have strong values. Like, all right. Yeah, certainly there's always reason to how to say wonder and to inquire, and let's absorb more in the Shastras and find here and there the details, and and to get more and more of a full picture of the pastimes of the Lord and understanding why, what, and how, and yes. Yeah, that will also be from my side. I think also time-wise we are at the end. And for the next session, will be announced, probably will be next Sunday. We will have the next two avatars. Will be Ram-avatāra and Balaram, if I'm correct. I have to see. All right. Thank you very much for your participation and interest in that little Sangha. And wish you a nice Sunday, and hopefully see you also next time. Hare Krishna.
You take care of yourself.
Yeah, I do. I will do.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.